Hey, I'm Matt Manny, and I want to welcome you to What on Earth Am I Here For? Session number 5. Let's go ahead and grab your study guide, and we'll go ahead and jump in as we continue on through our small group study. Turn to page 43 as we talk about the fourth purpose for us. So this is session 5, but we're talking about the fourth purpose for us that God has given to us, and that is ministry. You look at that phrase at the top there, it says that you were shaped to serve God. You were shaped to serve God. Our key verse for this week, if you look on the page facing that, page 42, we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. If you look at that verse, that God crafted us, God shaped us, God formed us to do what? What was the purpose for us? To do good works. So I would encourage you to go ahead and underline those 3 words, or actually 4 words, to do good works. So that those 4 words there, the goal is this, and we'll string this connection, this theme through, that the first purpose for us is understanding that we were called to be loved by God, that we were planned for God's pleasure, and so that's the purpose of worship. The second purpose for us that we learned about is that we were formed for God's family, and that is the purpose of fellowship, that we are called to belong. And then last session we looked at that third purpose is that we were created to become like Christ. And so the calling is to become, and the purpose there is discipleship. So we have worship, fellowship, discipleship, and then this session we're looking at is ministry. And so we know we're loved by God, that we know and love God. We can know and love each other. We can grow in our faith and become mature in our faith to become like Jesus Christ, follow him as our example. And the outflow of that maturity then is a desire to serve and to be a blessing to others. And so in this session, we're really going to dial in and see how we can be a blessing. We're called to bless and to serve other people. You look in there in your notes on page 43, you see this phrase that there is no such thing as a non-serving Christian, that we are saved to serve. You can jot that phrase down. You and I, we've been saved to serve. And so for us, it's that Disney song, if you ever saw Beauty and the Beast, and there is when Belle first gets into the castle and she's looking for her father, and it's all run down. And so she begins to meet the different different characters, Lumiere and Mr. Cogsworth and Mrs. Teapot and Chip the little tiny teacup. And they sing that song, Be Our Guest. And the opening line for that song is talks about that a life is so unnerving for a servant who's not serving. He's not whole without a soul to wait upon. And so the whole idea is all these different little utensils and pieces of furniture, that their purpose is to serve people. And obviously, as the story goes, you know that nobody's been to the castle, nobody's been there for a while. And same thing for you and me. When we get the most cynical and critical is when we've just sat and we've just soaked things in, and we don't have an outflow. There's a great illustration in the land of Israel that there's the Sea of Galilee in the north of Israel, and that's a freshwater lake. And from there it flows the Jordan River, and it flows all the way down into a really large body of water called the Dead Sea. Now, do you know why it's called the Dead Sea? Because nothing grows there. There's a high quantity of salt actually in the Dead Sea. So no animals live around the Dead Sea, no birds fly over the Dead Sea, nothing is planted around the Dead Sea. Why? Because there's no outflow from the Dead Sea. And so while there are small tributaries, there are small little rivers that flow into the Sea of Galilee, and there's an outflow from it down the Jordan River, the Dead Sea, just like some people, that there's all this taking in and no giving out. I remember a friend of mine, he once explained to me and told me about this phrase, that we are educated beyond our obedience. That being, we know more than what we do. And so as you look there, we find the 2 Timothy 1:9. It says, "It is he who saved us and chose us for his holy work." God could have used all kinds of different things to get his work accomplished. If you look in the scriptures, you see that at one point in the Old Testament, God used a donkey to get somebody's attention. God used a whale or a large fish to go ahead and swallow Jonah. God used all kinds of different means to get his work accomplished. And yet, the majority of the time, overwhelmingly so, that God desires to use men and women to accomplish his purpose here on earth. And so God used angels at times, and God used different things at times. And even in the New Testament, Jesus says that if the people don't praise me, that the rocks will cry out if people don't praise his name. So for us, that God created us just like you put a goldfish lives best and operates best in a fish bowl and under the water. It doesn't operate best outside of water. So too for you and me, we operate best when we are caring for and serving others. But the trouble is there's really this switch in our mind, this switch that has to be flipped, because for most of us, we are not born naturally open-handed. We're born with what? Look, a fist, a closed fist. We're clenching. We're always grabbing for things. We're clinging to things. And so our natural disposition is not to be open-handed, but to be closed-handed. And so it takes a choice. We have to choose to be willing to be open-handed, to serve and take care of others, because our natural leaning, our natural bent is to be self-serving. We look there, God planned in advance that he wanted you to do what he wanted you to do with your life. And this is where it gets really exciting. Of all the different sessions we'll do, this is one of the most exciting ones, because I love it when people have that moment where the light bulb comes on and they realize that they were uniquely created to do something amazing with their life. Ephesians 2:10, just like we talked about a moment ago, we are God's workmanship. That is God's craftsmanship. Just like Michelangelo, he had a big marble piece of rock, and so he chiseled away all the excess, and out of that stone, out of that marble came forth the statue of David. And so Michelangelo said, all I needed to do was remove what didn't give the picture of the statue, and so I just need to remove what wasn't necessary. And so many times for us in our lives, God's chipping and chiseling away at us, removing those unnecessary parts of us, and it can be painful at times. But as we are his workmanship, we find this, that he created us in Christ Jesus to do what? To do good things, to do things that benefit other people. I've said it around our church at times that the way we can love God the most is when we love other people with our best, the best we can do. And we lean into the calling God has for us, the best that we can. And so God prepared in advance those things for us to do. That God has a plan and a purpose for us. What matters in life is not how long you live, but how you live. What matters is not the duration of your life, but the donation of your life. I love that phrase, the turn of a phrase. Not the duration, but the donation, what you can contribute. We all have deep, deep needs. We have needs for security. We have needs for freedom. We have needs for significance. We have needs for being loved, for affection. We have needs for growth, to fill our sense of curiosity, to go ahead and fill that sense of wonder. But most of all, there's a sixth need that we have, and that's a need to contribute, to give back, to be involved, to leave our mark, and to know that our life has meaning. And that's really what we're talking about with this fifth session. What matters in life then is not how long you live, but how you live. And so you see there that God made us for a shape, that God shaped us for service. And so we're going to take this word shape, S-H-A-P-E, and we're going to look and use it as an acronym. That S stands for spiritual gifts. We see 3 different times in Scripture. There's 3 different lists of spiritual gifts, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. There is your heart, what you're passionate about, what you're burdened about. We see abilities. Those are the natural, raw talents and skills, things that you can do. Some people are really great with numbers. Some people are really good working with their hands. Some people can use their mind and see a puzzle and can be able to figure that puzzle out very quickly. Some people are really good with the gift of gab. And so what ability do you have? Then personality. Are you extroverted or introverted? Are you more relational? Are you more intellectual? Are you more wanting to be on the go? Or do you need more of a homebody kind of feel? Do you want to work with your hands or work with your mind? Do you want to be able to listen and be empathetic toward people, or be able to talk to and encourage people? So your personality. And then last of all, your experiences, your education, your family upbringing, your jobs, and most of all, one of the most powerful experiences that many times we don't realize that there's a turn, a pivotal moment, is the experiences of pain. And many times people's greatest ministries, their greatest shape is formed out of their deepest pain. Job 10:8, your hands shaped me and made me. And so we find that God has a purpose for you, even in all those different things. And we'll talk about how they all work together. On the next page, 1 Peter 4:10 says this: each one should use whatever gifts he has received to serve others. And so we got to be careful not to compare our gifts to other people's gifts. We've got to be careful not to say, oh, I wish I had those gifts, and not understand and to develop our own. And here's the part of it too, is that we have to be able to identify that shape, our shape that God has given to us very uniquely. And when you have the combination of those 5 components, your shape is going to be totally unlike anybody else's shape. There are going to be things that only you in this time, in history, where you live, can accomplish for God, unlike anybody else. And that's a magnificent thought, just to ponder for a moment, to realize that God shaped you for a specific a ministry to serve people in a very specific and unique way. As you look there, my 4th purpose in life is to serve God by serving others. That I serve God the best, and I serve God the most by serving others. And so it's that vertical connection to God. We can't see God, but we can serve others. And when we serve others and love others, it honors and pleases God. When I see my kids playing and being kind to each other, do you know that it warms my heart? And those of you who are parents, grandparents, and uncles, those of you who have children, and you see them when they're cooperating and being kind to each other, when they're doing things for each other, when people do stuff for my kids, that's one of the greatest ways I know that they love me and they care about me, is when they love and care about my kids, even more than if they do something for me. And so we find there, Matthew 20:28, your attitude must be like my own, for I, the Messiah, did not come to be served, but to serve. There's a book written by a guy by the name of Simon Sinek, and it's called Leaders Eat Last. And for a time, Simon Sinek, he's an author, he's a speaker. He came up with this great, big, awesome concept called Start With Why. He had a really famous TED Talk that went viral. And so he wrote several books, but his 3rd book he wrote was Leaders Eat Last. And some of his speaking engagements took him to different military bases and installations all around the country and around the world, really. And as he met with different military leaders, he found that for them, the key for leadership for so many of them, he actually observed in a cafeteria. And so he went to a cafeteria one day, into the mess hall, to have a meal, to have lunch with some of the people that he was engaging there. And he saw that the lower ranking guys, that they actually went through first, and the higher ranking men and women that were in charge, that they actually went later on in the line. They went last. And so when he finally got a chance to sit down and talk to these different military personnel, he said, I noticed, normally you'd think that the boss, the executives, the higher ups, that they would go first because they have to sit down to lunch, they have to get to their business meetings, they have to get to eating their meal so they can move on because they've got a very important schedule to keep. Why did you go last? And they said, it's just a part of our DNA here. That's a part of our attitude, is that we want to see our soldiers, our men and women, to be taken care of first. And then we'll come up the rear and make sure that they're taken care of. And it's all about looking out for the betterment and for the good of those around us, that we're not here at the top to be served, but we're making sure that our men and women are being taken care of and being served. And what a mentality to pass that down through the ranks, whether it's through our family or our friendships or our businesses where we work, to really have this mindset. And especially in businesses, there's this idea of a hierarchy, of a pyramid shape, and at the top of the pyramid there's the boss, and then down it gets wider down to a wide base, and everybody reports to the boss or serves the boss. Well, Jesus says I've inverted that and turned it really into an upside down pyramid, really a cone of sorts, where at the bottom is the leader, at the bottom is Jesus, and he's serving those, empowering those who are all the way up the chain of command. Almost even better would be the picture of a tree where the roots, that they soak in the water and they send the nutrients up through the trunk and into the branches and into the leaves and into the fruit. And so you and I were called to be like those roots, to go ahead and empower people. The best question you can ask your kids or your spouse or your friends, family member, employees, church members is this question: how can I help you? How can I help you? What can I do to help you accomplish whatever you're trying to accomplish, to fulfill your dreams, whatever it might be? How can I help you best? As we look there, that's the attitude Jesus has. So how do I serve like Jesus? There's a couple different points here. Serving like Jesus, first of all, means being available. Just simply being there. If you're not around or being available for people, it's impossible for us to really physically be there to help them. It's the idea of physics that two objects can't occupy the same space. If an object isn't there, the idea is you can't make a living at a job that you don't go to. You can't have a marriage where you don't show up. You can't have a friendship that you don't put into. If you only ate a meal once a year, well, you're not going to be very healthy, right? If you don't go to church and engage God very often, you're not going to be healthy spiritually. And so being available, being there, just showing up. Matthew 20:30 through 32. Two blind men shouted, "Lord, have mercy on us." And Jesus stopped and called them. "What do you want me to do for you?" he asked. In essence, how can I help you? If you're going to be used by God, you have to be willing to be interrupted. And it's hard because we live in a day and age where we have to take care of our own. We don't like distractions, and we find that people are usually a nuisance. But what about if we had this concept in our mind, flip a switch, if you will, that there are divine interruptions, that God brought people along our path that he wanted us to serve, to do something for them, to help them in a moment. Proverbs 3:28, never tell your neighbors to wait until tomorrow if you can help them now. I'll get to it. And I do this a lot of times with my kids. I'm guilty of it, where my kids say, "Dad, can you help me?" I'll get to it. Dad. And a moment turns into 15 minutes, 30, an hour. And then a couple hours pass and I finally say, "Hey, did you need my help for something?" "Yeah, Dad, it's kind of passed." And I missed the moment. And so the idea is this: if we can go ahead and pause and be present and stop what we're doing and just be available for people. Serving Jesus, number 2, then, means being grateful. Serving like Jesus means being available, and it means being grateful. Serving Jesus means being grateful. John 11, Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you." That word thank, go ahead and underline that word. "That you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here." And this gratitude. It changes our perspective. It changes how we see things. And so serving like Jesus means that I don't have to serve, but it's actually a privilege that I get to serve. 1 Timothy 1:12 says, "I thank Jesus Christ who gave me strength because he trusted me and gave me this work of serving him." So go ahead and underline that word thank there on the first line, and then work of serving him. Go ahead and underline that as well. And then draw a line between thank and work of serving him. Whatever you have right now, whatever interruption, what if the challenge that you have, what if we could change our perspective and say, "God, this isn't a burden to carry, but a blessing to behold. This isn't a punishment or a penalty, but this is a skilled expertise that you have given me this opportunity to raise this child, to interact with this person." And what if God looked down on this great big blue and green orb called Earth, and he was looking for somebody who he could trust and entrust a person, a situation, a circumstance, a challenge, and he saw you. You say, "That sounds so backwards." James talks about this. He says in James chapter 1 that every good and every perfect gift comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there's no variation, no variableness. That is, that he does one thing for one person and that he's inconsistent. There's no variableness nor shadow of turning, that God is consistently working with us to love us. And the challenges that we face, as we talked about through this series, these sessions, that Romans 8:28 says that all things work together for good to those who love God. So God can bring good out of these situations. And as I mentioned earlier, God can use these painful points as points that can be pivotal for us to minister, that many people have ministered out of their deepest pain and have had a platform where they could go ahead and serve other people. We see serving like Jesus means then being faithful, being available, being grateful, and being faithful. It just means showing up, being consistent. John 17:4, "I have brought you glory on earth by completing the work you gave me to do," to follow through, to finish it. 1 Corinthians 4:2, "The one thing required of such servants is that they be," what? Faithful. Circle that word, faithful. Matthew 16:27, "For the Son of Man is going to come in the Father's glory with his angels, and then he will reward each person according to" what? To what he has done, to what people have finished, followed through with. "Throw yourselves into the work of the Master, confident that nothing you do for him is a waste of time or effort." And so there's this confident hope and belief that what I do is going to matter and count for eternity. Matthew 10:42. And if you give even a cup of cold water to one of the least of my followers, you will surely be rewarded. It goes on there to say, Jesus says, if you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it for who? You've done it for me. No matter how insignificant your service might seem to you, God sees it all and he rewards it all. In God's eyes, there's no little service. That all these things that we do for God, that God sees and God knows and God watches and God takes note of, that nothing goes unnoticed by God. On the next page, you see there Colossians chapter 3, verse 23. Whatsoever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for men. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. So even in your work, even in your vocation, where you say, I really am struggling, like I'm having a hard time, like people aren't showing up to work on time, I'm getting stuck with other people's jobs, and people are passing off projects to me, and it's just not going well. If we can again have this change of perspective, I'm not doing this for my boss. I'm not even doing this to earn a paycheck, but I'm doing it for God. One of the things I tell our church family and I use is this, that there are some people that they work to live. In order for them to pay their bills, they have to work. They work to live. Then there's another type of person, a second type of person, where they live to work. They enjoy doing things. They're very achievement, accomplish oriented. They're doers. And so they actually could be considered maybe a workaholic, that they live to work. But then there's some people where they work to give. They understand the idea of giving back. They understand that their job can go ahead and take care of not just their family, but then they give back to God. They tithe, they give back to the church, or they help out some friends or neighbors. They give toward charitable organizations and causes. And so they work a job with the understanding, with the money I make, I can really help people out and change people's lives. But then there's a fourth type of person. You have people who work to live. You have people who live to work. You have people who work to give. And then there's a fourth category where there's people who live. They simply live to give. Whether it's in their working, in their free time, in their sleeping hours, in their waking hours, their mindset, they get to the point where my life isn't about me. I live my life really to help other people out. Now you can understand within reason here, you've got to have downtime, you've got to sleep, you've got to take care of your body, you got to eat right, you got to be healthy and those kind of things. So you got to take care of yourself so you can go ahead and have a chance to help other people. You need to take a day off. There's the principle of the Sabbath day. You need to have margin so that you don't burn yourself out or rust out or foul out. But to live out your life, really, we take these rhythms and seasons so that we can go ahead and really help other people. Because there's coming a day when all the helping and serving and giving and loving and doing, well, it'll all be past. We're going to be in heaven, where we're going to live for eternity to worship and honor and serve and love God face to face. And so all this life is really a dress rehearsal for what's to come for eternity. That leads us then to this last point. Serving like Jesus means being generous. And just as we talked about those four types of people, leads right into this, to live to give. 2 Corinthians 8:9 says this, when it comes to serving like Jesus means being generous. You are familiar with the generosity, circle that word generosity, of your master, Jesus Christ. Rich as he was, he gave it all away for us. In one stroke, he became poor and we became rich. Romans 3:24, out of sheer generosity, underline that word, generosity. God put us in right standing with himself, a pure gift. He got us out of the mess we're in and restored us to where he always wanted us to be. And he did it by means of Jesus Christ. And so God is working behind the scenes where we cannot see so that we can have the capacity to be God's conduit to serve and love other people. 2 Corinthians 9:13, you will be glorifying God through your generous gifts, underline that word generous gifts, those two words, for your generosity, underline generosity, will prove that you are obedient to God, to the good news of Jesus Christ, of Christ. It's one thing to say, hey, how you doing? Hey, is there anything I can do for you? And we're hoping against hope, deep down inside, I hope they don't ask me to do anything, but do we really mean it? But honestly, when we say something, and even better, when we say something and do something, or do something without saying it, and we're generous, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where we have true credibility. That's where we truly reflect the heart of God, is when we give to other people. John 3:16 says, for God so loved the world that he what? He gave, that four-letter word, gave his only son. And so when we give to people, we're letting go of something. We're taking a risk. We are taking a step of faith, trusting God that God can fill what we let go of. He can refill our hand. In 2 Corinthians 9:11, it says, "You will be made rich in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion, and your generosity will result in what? In thanksgiving." And so God shaped us to what? He created us to serve just like Jesus. How? By being available, by being grateful, by being faithful, and by being generous. I'd encourage you to go ahead and go over your discussion questions, look those over, answer those questions there in your study guide. Go ahead and look at living on purpose, diving deeper, and your prayer for direction. One of the things I would really encourage you to do, as we talked about the SHAPE, SHAPE, there's an assessment in the back of this study guide that you can go ahead and take a look at. There on page 48, you can read a little description of the SHAPE profile. Page 78 to 82 in this study guide. It's so helpful to be able to go ahead and have some direction and some clarity to see exactly where God would have you serve and minister people. So I'd encourage you, for those of you who are at Greater Philly Church, well, I'd love for you to take this assessment and let me know, and for us to be able to sit down and take a look at this together. If you're watching this video and you're going through this material on your own, I would encourage you to get plugged into a church, a Bible-believing church, where you can go ahead and see these gifts and abilities used, so you can pour out your life into the life of other people and really find your sense of significance, that your life matters. Why? Because God is using you in a wonderful and a powerful way. Another thing to do is fill out the assessment and talk to some close friends or family members and have them take a look at the assessment and get some feedback from them and ask them, hey, what do you think? Is this a pretty fair assessment of how God shaped me and how God's wired me? And then get some feedback, some ideas with them of, well, what do you think that I could do to give back? And maybe for you, you could get together with your small group and serve. You could get together with your friends or family members and do maybe a one-time project. Or maybe you could do something for a season where you help out at the church, or you help out with some kind of other volunteer organization. You can go ahead and engage your neighbors and really see that you have a mission to your next door neighbors in your neighborhood by serving folks and taking care of them. There's all kinds of different opportunities and possibilities for you to be able to serve other people and be a blessing to them. Hey, I encourage you to go ahead and spend some time looking over these questions, pray together, have a fantastic week. In the next session, we'll go ahead and talk about the last purpose, the fifth purpose for us, and that is evangelism. And God's purpose for us, the mission that He has called us to, that you were made for a mission. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.